Static RPM check should be performed after installation, maintenance, or propeller adjustment. A calibrated tachometer must be used to ensure the accuracy of the RPM check. You can check the accuracy of the tach at various RPM settings by using a device such as Hartzell's View-Through 2 tachometer. First, back the governor maximum RPM stop out one turn. This is done to make sure you are getting propeller RPM and not governor-controlled RPM. Next, advance the propeller control lever to maximum RPM, then retard the control lever 1 inch. Make sure the brakes are set and the wheels are chalked. Start the engine. Slowly advance the throttle to maximum manifold pressure. Slowly advance the propeller control lever until the engine speed stabilizes. Depending on the installation, if the engine speed stabilizes at the rated RPM to 50 RPM lower than the rated RPM, the low pitch stop is set correctly. If the engine speed stabilizes above or below the rated RPM, the low pitch stop requires adjustment. Should this be the case, you should refer to the owner's manual for the proper procedures to make this adjustment. Shut down the engine, return the governor maximum RPM stop to its original position. Remove the spinner, check for oil and grease leakage. When you are satisfied everything looks okay, reinstall the spinner. Well, I hope you have enjoyed the time we have had together and were able to learn something new. Before Sam shows up, let me review a few major points. When you inspect the propeller, you want to look for corrosion, loose blades, nicks, grease, and oil leaks, cracks, and loose or missing hardware. Remember, grease or oil leaks can be an indication of a crack. Inspect thoroughly before wiping off the indications. When you clean the prop, do not use a pressure washer. Simply wipe it with a cloth with solvent and wash with soap and water. If you need to do a minor repair to the blade, make sure you use a corrosion preventative along with paint when refinishing the repaired area. Keep in mind that in addition to the bending and vibrating loads that the propeller is encountering, there are 10 to 20 tons of centrifugal force trying to pull the blades from the hub during operation. You can see why it is so important to make sure that the prop is in good shape. A prop that is maintained helps ensure the safety of passengers and the aircraft. Just like most other mechanical parts, the propeller can show signs of impending problems or failure. Watch for them and correct them immediately. If you come across a problem that you are unsure of or don't understand, call us at Hartzell or your local prop shop. Remember, your customers believe what you say to be correct. If you give the aircraft owner the impression that propellers don't need maintenance or to be overhauled, you are doing a big disservice to your customer and your profession. One more thing, most of what we covered today is in the propeller owner's manual. Tell your customers to keep this manual with their aircraft logbooks and refer to it often. Hi Sam, did you find your way around okay?
Yeah, fine. And thanks for use of the car. Did you find anything?
Well, let me show you what I did. I cleaned and serviced it per the manual and didn't find any loose blades or evidence of oil or grease leakage. There was a small nick on the blade that I dressed out and refinished. I also did a static run-up and found the low pitch stop to be set okay. And let me show you the logbooks. I entered the proper entries here in the propeller log, along with the tach time and per the FARs. I also checked to make sure that all ADs were complied with and noted what manufacturer's service documents apply to this propeller.
That sounds great. Am I ready to go? I've already taken care of the paperwork in the office.
There's one more thing I want to remind you about. You mentioned earlier you hadn't done anything to the propeller recently. Service Letter 61 addresses the recommended overhaul periods for the propeller. While reviewing your logbooks, I found that your prop is overdue for an overhaul. I know you fly under Part 91, but as your mechanic, I strongly recommend that you follow the guidelines set in the service letter and get the overhaul done.
Okay, makes sense to me. I've been thinking about what we talked about when I first got here. Do you have a copy of Service Letter 61, or can you tell me where to find it?
You can get the service letter off the Hartzell website at www.hartzellprop.com. There's also a lot of other useful information about propellers you might find helpful, or call our product support.
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Did everybody else hear me okay? Or is it just Daniel?
Just Daniel.
I couldn't
Just
hear you.
Daniel. All
No,
right.
you were muted before.
Now I can
Don't mute
hear.
yourself.
Oh, you got your end fixed? All right. That particular Hartzell, or a lot of Hartzels, you can actually adjust the low pitch stops external. So that's what he did was a little bit different what I said. So he backed off the governor to actually check the stops in the propeller, which I do like that about the Hartzell. And so then he checked the low pitch stop, then he brought the governor set screw back in. So he was actually checking that. So, but on the other one, like the Macaulay's, you can't do that. So it's all internal. So if it's off, you got to take it apart.
What about the grease fitting?
What about the grease fitting? No, that was accurate.
Well, you said not to wait until it goes to the other side.
Well, okay, there's two different types of props. I said, don't ever wait till it goes the other side, but I was talking about the compact. So when you, because that's all in the hub. So when he did the one where it came out the other side, that was just a blade retainer. That wasn't the hub. Did you follow that?
Oh, I see what you mean. It was the one side,
Steel.
not the entire hub.
Well, okay, let me see if I can. Where was that one? Dang it. Let me go back here. If I can find it real quick.
Problem, such as the hub being cracked, or a minor problem such as a seal being damaged and needing repair.
Where did you do the sealing?
At the beginning.
Did I say sealing? I meant,
I thought it was after
Around
the
there.
dressing.
yeah. Overspeed. There it is. Okay.
Wire and make sure the opening is clear.
So on this is the compact hub. So on the compact hub, you have to take off the trailing edge grease cert fitting for tractor props. So you take that one out and then you put, he said 6 pumps. Most of the things I say, although I don't want to disagree with him because he's the one working for Hartzell, say 4 pumps or 1 ounce. So you put 1 ounce in and you're done. Don't put any more than that. And as the prop shop that I was listening to, they were talking about, you're actually, what is it? So you put 1 ounce a year. It was something like the prop can hold 12 ounces. So it's good for 12 years. So if you over grease it 1 year, you just kind of shot it out there. So, because where does the grease go? It didn't go anywhere. It stays in there. So it's got a capacity to hold it for X number of ounces. So if you overdo it, you're screwed. So, but that was the compact. See, he's not waiting for it to come out. You wait for it to come out, you done screwed up. You just bought an overhaul. But on the, there, on the steel hub, see, these are just blade retention. It doesn't go, the hub's over here. It's separate from the hub. And so you're not getting grease into the hub when you do this. It's just traveling literally from there to there around the outside of the blade. That's why he waited for it to come out on the steel hub, which is very different than the compact. Got it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Good question.
So on this propeller, we're allowed to change the stop on it.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you have the manual, sure. because it's just on the outside. I don't have a picture of it. I have that. This one. No. Oh, these have the air fittings. It's not with the air fitting one. I don't have a picture. Well, this is kind of it. It's right there. So where that has the air fitting. Well, actually, I believe even with the air fitting, there's a second adjustment on there. But you can get in. You don't have to. It's not like you're doing that very often. So you got to ask yourself, if you're adjusting a low pitch stop on a prop, why are you doing that? Was it never set up from before, or did something go wrong? If something went wrong, well, then you got to figure out what that wrong was before you start adjusting the prop. So it's not something you're going to do very often. I've only had to do it like 2 or 3 times in my career. And it was because it was just set incorrectly, and I was fine tuning a twin engine to match one versus the other that wasn't set up quite right. So the last person who set it sort of got it a little wrong. So I had to fix what was set wrong. So probably it was right from the factory, and then a mechanic messed it up and I had to fix it. So otherwise, it's just not something you do very often.
Okay, makes sense.
But if you do, just go to the manual. All right, are you ready to switch gears and talk about the Hydromatic? So this is Hydromatic by de Havilland, England, which I believe is still Hamilton standard. So remember the Hamilton standard? I said it's totally different. It was the 2-speed, then it became the constant speed. Well, same company brought you this, and the same people are going to mess you up your head here are going to mess you up again. So this is completely different than what we studied, but the principles still remain. So you still have the same forces acting on the propeller. Nothing's changed. Oh, by the way, there's the governor sitting right there. I like that one. The same principles are in effect. Centrifugal twisting force is still there. It's still the greatest force that's going to be acting to twist the blades. And this does not have any counterweights. So what does that mean centrifugal twist force does?
Low blade angle.
Low blade angle.
Low blade angle, except this is a full feathering propeller. And in fact, some of these were even beta range, reversing propellers. So if we don't have counterweights, then that means that centrifugal twisting force brings it to low blade angle. What brings it to high blade angle?
Oil pressure.
Oil pressure. So what do I need to feather it?
Oil pressure.
Oil pressure. So this is going to be very different. I think it's really a cool prop. And I sort of enjoy it's just different. So it makes it fun. There are different versions of this propeller. Some use a double acting governor. Some use a single acting governor. Probably for the sake of simplicity, I should stick with a single acting governor. But I will tell you that a double acting governor, all it does is it has the ability to put oil on either side of the piston. So I like these little guys there. How's the situation, Gov? Things are on the decrease. So what they're saying is they're underspeeding. And so, well, without getting too crazy with this. So the governor still works the same. Still have underspeed, overspeed, on speed. But with a double acting, you can put oil pressure behind the piston or in front of the piston. So if you want to go, I don't even remember which way it is. I think, let me see, backwards is, let me see, on this particular, because it goes, they change them. There's different versions. Hang on, so underspeed. So underspeed, we've got oil coming in, high pressure oil back here. Going forward, they're going to move the piston dome forward, which is going to be flatten it out. So flatten it out. Now to go, if it overspeeds, you just reverse it. So overspeed, now instead of draining oil necessarily, one side still drains it, but it adds oil to the front of the dome this time and then drains the back. So where normally we would just see add oil, drain oil, now you can add oil on one side, add oil on the other side. But that's what a double acting governor does. Not all of these have double acting governors. In fact, most of the ones that I look at are just single acting governors that act exactly the same. So if we want to, I don't love these pictures here. Let me see if I can get out of this. Oh, 1 second. Let's see if I did something different here. No, all my props, all the pictures are the same way. So it's pretty much the same. Boy, I really don't have a lot of pictures for you. Oh, well. Okay, so everything is going to be about the same as far as how the propeller works in the basic range. So I'm going to write a few notes, and then I'm going to mostly have to draw pictures and explain things to you because I don't have a lot of factory pictures, but that's okay. I can make it work. So 6. So the Hamilton standard. Hamilton standard hydromatic propeller. And the only real tricky thing about this prop is that is the feathering operation. So I'm going to say there's 3 models, but there's a lot more than 3 models, but because they come in all different sizes. And oh, by the way, I've got a really cool video, one of these old wartime videos that you're going to love it, where the guys are got the oh, what's that stuff they put in your hair?
Mark?
Huh?
Is that we Mark?
It's got Mark in it. No, I mean, it's old time. It's black and white, backward. What's the stuff guys put in their hair to slick it all back? The oil.
Oil? I don't know.
Pomade.
Pomade. Thank you. That's it. They got like a whole jar of it. So I'm going to say they're all constant speed. I don't know of anything that isn't a constant speed. So that'd be model 1. And then we have a constant speed. CONSTANT. It's constant speed that feathers. Feathering. And then we get into constant speed feathering / reversing. Now this whole reversing thing, it's called the beta range, which is from 0 degrees to reversing. So anytime you get a flat pitch, I mean 0, and you start going the other way, reversing, that's called the beta range. But on older props, they would just say, well, it's reversing. So let me see, where do I go here? So we have three main components. I got to move over. Everybody good? I can't see you, so I'm just going to move and, oh, I got to erase it. So I better check here. Is that a 3-blade? Yeah, they're 3 blades. I don't think they've ever made a 2-blade version of this thing. They're all 3 blades. All right, everybody's good. I'm going to erase it all. I'm out of paper.
Yep.
File, thanks. Clear all. All right, so as far as the construction goes, you can see that it's a little different because it's completely disappeared. I'm going to bring it back up. You can see that it's very different, and that this whole dome assembly is a lot different than anything you've seen so far. But it's the key to it is all up here in the dome. You can see there's no springs, no air pressure, no nothing. It's just either oil pressure or centrifugal twisting force. And the way this dome works up here is it's got this giant cam assembly. And so when it moves forward, when you move forward, it is a really bizarre thing. This picture doesn't even do it justice. But when the dome or the piston moves one way or the other, through a cam assembly, it causes this to rotate. And when that rotates, it just meshes in with the blades and causes the blades to go higher pitch or lower pitch. And that's all it is. So it's not some big secret how it works. But the cam assembly, as you can see, here's a decent representation of it. It's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. But going back to my notes here, somewhere I've got them. There we go. All right, so 3 models. We'll say there's 3 main components. Three main components. And that's the hub assembly, which you know what the hub assembly is now. It's got the spider in it. It's got all that other stuff, all the other stuff. Yes, lump it all into one. But it's the core of it that holds the blades. Then we have the dome assembly, which holds that giant cam up front, all the parts up front. That's the actuating mechanism. And then it's not necessarily a main assembly in a lot of respects, but when we talk about it, we're going to talk about the distributor valve. Distributor valve, and that's a key component though on how the whole thing works. So if we talk about, we'll go back and talk about the hub assembly. Hub assembly, you know, it contains the parts I just mentioned, has the spider. Do I really want to write all this out? No, I really don't. Let's just, what the hell? Probably take me longer to figure out what I don't want to write. Okay, got the spider. It contains the, where it holds the blades. It has the blade gear segments. Blade gear segments. Those are the parts that turn the gears. It has the barrel halves. Support blocks, spacers, bearings, open bearings. It's got all that stuff in there. So that's the core of it down below. Then we go out towards the dome assembly where all the, it's a dome assembly, dome assembly. Dome assembly. That's what contains the pitch change mechanisms. Pitch change mechanism. We have the dome shell, which is the whole. It has a spinner on it as well, but the dome shell is. I'll just get rid of this for a second. The outer part right here, or I'll go back a page. There we go. It's this outer dome right here. So right there. So that's the dome assembly. And that actually seals the oil up inside there. So there's oil up in here, and then there's oil inside of right inside of this cam assembly is here. I think that video that I show you, even though it's old and kind of some ways a little silly, it's got all these parts in there, and it's kind of cool. We have a lot of cutaways at school that I won't even bring them in the class. They're so freaking heavy. I think the dome assembly is probably 100 pounds. Inside there, there's the piston. It moves back and forth. We have the rotating cam cylinder. And the stationary cam. Stationary cam cylinder. And it's these two cylinders working in conjunction with each other to give the in and out and the rotation. So one goes in and out and the other one rotates back and forth. And that's what then the gears then mesh with the gears on the blades, and which causes the rotation. And you have the stop rings, the pitch stop rings. All right, we'll go with this. Now remember, not all of them have a double acting governor, but I'll just go with the double acting governor on this one. So F, oops, that should be E because E was low pitch stop lever assembly, directs oil, but I'm going to bypass that. We'll just call this E then. E, so governor. So the model that I'm going to talk about uses a double acting governor. Like I said, they don't all have to. So this one uses a double acting governor. Double acting governor. So, and as I said, it's the same principle as any other governor, as other governors, but delivers oil to oil, I should say under pressure, oil under pressure, to both sides of the piston, to both sides of the piston.
If you didn't have the double acting governor, would you need counterweights?
Nope, this prop never used counterweights that I'm aware of.
It uses double just to gain more control.
Say it again. What was that?
Oh, it uses the double governor just to gain more control.
I'm going to guess that that's it. Yeah, more control. These are usually very large propellers. This is the same. Okay, you know the big propeller we have sitting by the tool room door, the big shiny one. This is it, and that's a small version. That's a really small version. So that's what we're talking about, is this particular type. And I don't know, again, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm trying to condense some of my notes. So using even if we want to use the double acting governor theory, or even if we don't, we go into one that doesn't. All right, we know a couple of things. One, we know that centrifugal twisting force is always going to bring this prop, because it doesn't have counterweights, into a low blade angle. But it doesn't just rely on centrifugal twisting force on its own. It's going to rely also on governor oil pressure to drive the dome. So, so for an overspeed condition, let me go to my next slide. Oops, we can follow this. So we have overspeed. So overspeed condition, as I showed you, I'll just go through it slower. We have engine oil pressure. It's going to go the governor gears, and that's going to happen under 100% of all situations. And if we're in an on-speed condition, then this is going to be blocked up here, and the pressure is just going to go through the relief valve and right here. So that'd be on speed, no oil going anywhere, right? And in this one, we're in an underspeed. So it means it's going too slow. Now, normally, if we had a single acting governor, all we would have to do is release oil pressure and let it do its own thing. So this one is, you can see it's an underspeed, so it's trying to flatten it out. So it's trying to push the dome forward, and that's going to drive the cam this way and bring the prop down into a lower speed. So make sure when this can just the pitch setting. Yeah, I'm not going to yell that. So, all right. So it's trying to decrease the pitch. And so, like I said, in a single acting governor, because it's just decreasing pitch, it would normally just bleed off oil from the front of the dome, let the centrifugal twisting force of the blades do its own thing, force the cam to force the piston forward, to then bleed off this what is in blue right now, and just bleed it off. And that works. And what it does is it just blocks off the red, and the red recirculates. Okay, but it's not doing that double acting. So because the pilot valve, instead of just bleeding off the blue, it actually shoves some pressure behind here and forces it forward, goes a little bit quicker. All right, so it's the same, everything's the same, just adding a little pressure behind it. And then we go into an overspeed, should be next, overspeed. Okay, so it's spinning too fast. We have to increase the blade angle, increase the pitch. Well, normally to increase the pitch on something like this, it needs oil pressure. And so now this is acting very normal, and that we need oil pressure. And so it would drain off the blue, which it is like normal, and adding red up to the front. So you see that? So this is, to me, this is normal. This is the way it's got to operate, because it doesn't have counterweights. So normal operation. Go back one and say, okay, so now overspeed, normally you just bleed off the pressure from the blue and let centrifugal do its own thing and go forward. But here we just added some pressure to the back. So not a big deal, right? So if you look at that and say, okay, this works almost like everything else we've ever seen. We just added the double acting governor, no big surprises, no big changes, right? I mean, has anybody seen anything different? Okay, just want to make sure that I'm not making it too simple. Here's where everything changes, is that you have to still feather this propeller in a lot of circumstances. And so to feather it, it needs an entirely different mechanism to do it. And so what it does, I'm gonna pull up my thing and draw. So what you have, first of all, you're gonna have an oil tank with a standpipe. All right, so that's 2 engine. So this is how the engine's going to get its oil, but it uses a standpipe, which is tall. So we got our oil in here, right? Oil's here and everything works great. And then we also have a second outlet, and this goes to feather pump, Really thought I had a drawing of this somewhere. I don't know what the heck happened. Oh, I do. I see it right there. All right. I like my drawing better. So I'll explain it, then I'll show you the drawing. So then we have to the engine. So here's what happens. So we have this situation with all the other ones. We said, well, if we run out of oil, we can't feather it. Well, in this particular case, that's okay, because here's my oil level. If my oil level the engine starts to run out of oil and it ever gets down to here, guess what the engine gets? No oil. But we've saved a little bit for this feathering pump. So it's got a completely separate system, this feathering pump. Now I'll bring up the picture since I realized I found it. Actually, is this the feathering? No, on speed. Well, I might as well stop here. On speed. If it's on speed, just like everything's normal, block off all oil from going anywhere, and it's going to hold the piston right in place. So nothing new there. All right, here's the feathering system. So let's see. There's my oil tank, but hey, mine was better. So you have to have a standpipe for this oil tank. So it's the engine oil, but you always have a little bit in reserve. And so then you have this electric pump. So adding something completely different. And I think there's quite a few Q&A questions about this feathering button. And it's funny. So the way you feather it is there's a gigantic button, huge button, says to feather push. And what you do is you push this button, and it has a holding coil, just means there's some it's a solenoid in it. When you push the button, it stays in. And so it's going to hold it and it's going to stay in and it's going to power this pump. And at the same time, it's going to pull the pressure cutouts. It's going to pull the pilot valve into the feather position, which is really the high pitch position. So it pulls in the high pitch position and it tells the governor basically to shut up. We're not going to listen to you anymore. And the pump starts running, and it takes oil. Where's my oil? Oil goes into a pump, and high pressure oil comes in. And just like the governor normally would to go to higher pitch, it does that, but this pump just keeps bypassing the governor and keeps putting more and more pressure to the backside of the dome, front side of the dome, bring it into more and more and more of a feather until it keeps going, and then eventually it stops windmilling. Now, the governor would have said a long time ago, hey, you need to stop this business because we are really too slow. But this feathering pump, nobody's telling it to be quiet or knock it off. So it just keeps going and going and going, like the little energizer button, until these props go into a full-blown feather position. Now, when it hits the full feather position, it's going to hit stops in the prop. And the oil pressure inside that this pump is building up is going to increase dramatically. It is going to go way up. I think it's up to about, I was going to say around 700 PSI, but about to 600 PSI. I think it goes way up there. And then at a certain point, it's around 600 PSI. I have to look at my notes, but around 600 PSI, there's a pressure switch right here that says, whoa, man, you got a lot of pressure here, because it's fully feathered and you're fighting against the stops and the prop's not moving anymore and the pressure's just going up. Then this little pressure cutout switch over here releases the holding coil, this button pops out, and the pump stops pumping. and this is now in feather. So it's all done by an electric motor that bypasses the governor. Now here's the funny part. So I have a friend who had a airplane that had this system on it, and he bought it, and he told me the story, and so he bought this airplane. It's a Twin Beach, and he went flying, and he had a Czech pilot with him who had, massive experience in one of these things. And so he's flying around, and, he's about checked him out. And he goes, it would be a smart idea on this checkout. Remember, he wasn't doing a check ride. It was just, he bought the airplane, wanted somebody to show him how it worked. He said, it'd be a good idea if I, shut down an engine, see how it worked, and, flew it around a little bit, and then see how it got check ride. Said, yeah, you know what? You're right. Let's do that. So, okay. So, they shut down the engine. They push in the feathering button. There's the holding coil, pushing the button, bam, button stays. The motor starts running. It sucks oil. It goes through the pilot valve, goes into the prop. The prop starts twisting into feather. It gets up to 650 PSI or something like that. 650 PSI. You got the pressure sensing switch does that. Pop, button comes out. Boom. We are flying around in feather, and it was cool. And they flew around for a while, and he was happy. He said, well, let's take the thing home. And he said, go ahead and take it out of feather. And the other guy looked at each other and said, yeah, I can't find an unfeather button. There's no unfeather button in here. So they had to make an emergency landing on one engine. They didn't know how to unfeather it. So, and I won't name names because they're both very bright guys anyway. So things happen. So
would that not be in the POH?
Probably would have been. I don't know. They didn't. But I don't know. Yeah, I know. I didn't ask that question. He goes, so do you know how to unfeather one of these? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. It's this button right here. So what happens is there is a transfer valve. It doesn't even show it. There's a transfer valve. And so normally this valve is lined up so that when this pressure goes in here and it goes in and it goes, the front side of the dome and pushes this all back, that works that way, and it's all lined up. But there is a transfer valve that is pressure sensitive. And when you put enough pressure on it, it shifts. And it takes a lot of pressure. I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 PSI. I think it's right around 700 PSI because the pressure cutout's at 650. So it's around 700. So if you push this button in and hold it, it's got contacts, which is what it's representing right here. So if I zoomed in on that, it's representing, these are contacts right here that are going over to here and going to making the pump work. So, but there's a coil in here that holds it there. So you can let go. But if you were to push this and hold it on and you did not let go of that, what happens is the pump starts to go because that's what you're telling it to do. See, it's got power that comes through here, through a solenoid. It's making the solenoid go. It makes the pump go. So just trust me on that one. So the pump starts going. And the cutout switch is saying, man, you got to knock this off. We're at 600 PSI. We're going to try to kill us all. But you keep holding that button in. Eventually, the transfer valve slides. And where the oil was going to the front of the dome, it reverses and goes to the back. And it starts pushing the piston back the other way, which then takes the blades out of feather, and they start to come out of feather, then let go of the button, and the engine starts windmilling all on its own. Well, you can hold the button down if you want. It doesn't matter. But then this will start windmilling, and the transfer valve is going to go right back to normal. So it's the transfer valve slides back and forth and just realigns what is normal for this particular engine. So that's how you get it out of feather. So you just push and hold the button until it starts to windmill on its own, then let go, everything returns to normal. Cool? I thought it was cool. So,
and that is after being in feather, right?
Yeah, after being feathered. Yep.
Who would have known it was that simple?
It's so, I know, I don't even probably have to write notes for you guys. It was like, well, duh. That's how you would have designed it, right?
So at that point, when you're trying to go from unfeather, the holding coil isn't going to hold it in because you've already hit that critical pressure.
Right. That's exactly what it is. So if you go back, if I go back to the drawing and back to my example, so if you're flying around and it's feathered, and you're like, I don't know, hit the feather button again. You're going to push the button. The holding coil is going to grab it. It's going to start the pump. The pump's going to build up to 600 and kick the button right back out again every time. But if you sit there and hold it, put your foot on it, put your arm on it, the pressure builds up. slides the transfer valve, and I can't even draw a transfer valve because they're a little complicated in hydraulicness, but it starts it going again. So I could write some notes. Let me see.
Excuse me, why centrifugal twisting force don't turn this propeller back to the low blade angle?
Because once it's feathered, it's totally feathered. The wind coming across it won't move it either which way. And the blade's not moving. They come to a stop. So there is no more centrifugal anything.
Okay, understand.
Feathering system, all right. Utilizes, make that one, utilizes a push button, rather than a lever, to feather and unfeather prop, to feather and unfeather the prop. God, it's almost 7:50. The time just flies. All right, when button is depressed and not sad when it's pushed in, depressed, a holding coil, and for you who understand electricity, it's just a coil, and then the button is inside the solenoid. And so as long as there's power to the motor, there's also power to the coil, which pulls the handle, and the button holds it in. So a holding coil holds the button in until the feathering operation is complete, until the feathering operation is complete. Okay, the button energizes a solenoid to an electric motor, And for those of you that haven't had electricity yet, and for those of you that have and don't remember, a solenoid is just a remote control switch that controls little wires control a big current. So rather than having giant wires running all the way to the coil and back down to this motor, you run little wires to the remote control in the back, so to speak, and that's called a solenoid to the electric motor that drives a pump to supply it's PPLI 600 PSI. That's a lot, isn't it? To the prop. A, B, C. So oil for the feathering pump. Feathering pump is supplied from the engine, from the engine supply. Remember, most of these engines, all of the engines this went to, they probably have remote oil tanks. It's not a sump engine. It's a dry sump engine because they're radial engines. So you have a big old tank with gallons of oil. So the high pressure from the feathering pump, from the feathering pump shifts a high pressure transfer valve, a high pressure transfer valve transfer valve in the governor, to hydraulically remove the governor from the system. The governor from the system. Because we can't have the governor in there telling us, hey, we're under speed or over speed or trying to override this and move the pilot valve. We gotta change this. So once you start the feathering pump, that high pressure goes into the governor and says, and overrides it. So there's a hydraulic valve that it moves and says, nope, you are ineffective. The high pressure, is then diverted to the piston. High pressure is diverted to the piston, to drive the blades to feather. Drive the blades to feather. All right, so piston, drive the blades to feather. So now we're building up the pressure, moving the blades into feather. So F, when the blades stop moving, and they're going to stop moving because they're going to hit the internal stops inside of the prop hub. So when the blades stop moving, not round and round like propeller blades, when they stop their pitch change, movement, the pressure builds to over 600 PSI, and at 650 thereabouts PSI, and that's at 650 PSI, the cutout will shut off the motor, shut off the electric motor, and release the feather button. And then the blades are just there. They're happy and fine. They actually, I could put this, the blades are held in feather, by aerodynamic forces.
Kevin,
Yep.
it is hard to start the engine. Like if it stops when it goes to feather and then you're up high and then want to restart.
Okay, well, to restart, you wouldn't restart the engine with it in feather. That would not make any sense. So you just...
I understand that. I just want to know how hard it is on the engine to start with the centrifugal force.
Okay, I'm going to say up in the air, and this is just my opinion, significantly easier than on the ground. Significantly. And since I've started at least, 310 size aircraft on the ground in feather, and it's not a big deal, it's just not really healthy for the starter. But you can do it. I just don't want to do it a lot, especially if I own the starter. It's just hard on them. It's a big load, but you can do it. You absolutely can do it. But up in the air, I'm going to say it's really not that big of a deal, because the minute you get any sort of blade angle on it to where it starts rotating the engine with the aerodynamic forces, the load is removed from the starter and it's not a big deal. So that's how I see that.
At that point, it would just be a matter of getting it matched to the other motor, correct?
Yeah, starting it up and yeah, and setting your governor to the right thing and turning on your sync, and there you go. So there we go. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow for our last day.
Evan, I can't express the sadness that I feel for our last day.
Yeah, let's just go on to Friday.
You know what, we might have to, maybe instead of rushing tomorrow, I'll slow down and say, okay, so we'll see, but I won't force you guys since it's overtime. So, all right, I will see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for all the knowledge.
Thanks
All
for
right,
the knowledge.
take care.
Thanks, Kev. I hope Zeus hears us.
Hi, Kev.
Let's see. I don't hear him.
Night.